Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. This is your host Fardeen Khan, and you're watching another video presented by Code Panthers. Now, if you have checked out the Firebase series, there is actually only one video which was about getting started with Firebase applications. Now, I see that it has been a bit out of date since it was released, I guess, in 2019. Since then, Google, the owner of Firebase, has released some more features that I would like to explore in an accumulated video this time. So let us talk about Firebase first. So as you can see from the description on the right hand pan in the Chrome tab, it's a platform that is developed by the Google for creating mobile and web applications. So Firebase actually existed as a separate company, which was then bought by Google. And now it is currently the major powerhouse for delivering services over the cloud whenever you are looking for mobile or web applications. So it is not actually helping, it is not actually creating mobile and web applications for you through a coding platform. Instead, it is providing you the infrastructure and the services that are required to manage these applications. So when you search for Firebase, obviously this is what you will get. Firebase.google.com is the main site. We'll be contacting Firebase. So this is a new account. As you can see, Code Panther symbol is here. And I have not actually created any of the projects in it for you to explore a real-time one, but I think there is an existing demo project that they keep for us to explore. But right now in this video we are only looking at the types of services that Firebase is providing. So Firebase in general is a service provider. It will provide these services but let itself manage all the infrastructure, so you don't have to worry about managing those services, the infrastructure or deployment on the server. You only have to worry about connecting those services to your application and develop your application to a quality standard that you wish for. So that saves you time, increases your efficiency, and also saves some bugs. Okay, so the products and the services that Firebase provides are divided into these three major categories. There actually is a fourth, but it is not a product exactly. It's basically extensions. So as you can see, build, release, and monitor, engage. So these are obviously also in sequence. So when you are developing an application, first you are building the application, then you are releasing it and monitoring its performance, and then finally you are trying to increase the engagement of the users. So this is actually divided in a very logical format. So let us move on to the first section, that is the build products. So as the description says, accelerate app development with fully managed backend infrastructure. So what that means is that every application, irrespective of its size or reach, does require some kind of backend features. For example, we can talk about authentication so that only valid users can access the database or something. And as we are saying about database, the applications most of the time also require a database. Now in traditional or conventional application development, you will set up your own server, maybe on the cloud or on premise. You will create your database instances, connect them through API to your Android application or other mobile application or web. That is a very tedious task and not any longer required when such service providers like Firebase are present. So let us see what build products are actually present in Firebase. So okay, again these are divided into three more categories. Signing up, that is without managing server, we are talking about authentication. Then easily solve common app development problems, that is managing storage or databases, etc., and effortlessly scale to the supporting millions of users. So one major benefit of a cloud-based, serverless, or we can say self-managed or cloud-managed infrastructure is that it can scale very easily. For example, today, as per your billing plan, you have 10 GB of storage, but suddenly there is a spike of user engagement and your storage is running out. So it will immediately effortlessly increase the storage count. It will charge you more, but you don't have to move a hair to increase that capacity limit. Only you have to make sure that you pay on the right time. Okay, so moving on to the first service that we see, Cloud Firestore. So this is basically a database that we can keep our data in for our applications and mobile and web. So what kind of database it is? It is called a NoSQL database. Now, if you do not know what NoSQL database is, I will put up some links in the description so that you can learn about it, and later on I will create a video about it as well. So generally we talk about SQL databases, which are only tables. Tables, that means each of the entry is a record that is represented by a row, and all the attributes that we have are defined by the columns. So one table in SQL database will represent one type of data, one structure of data. That is not true in the case of NoSQL database, where there is no defined schema. It is basically converting your data into a format that we call JSON, or that is JavaScript object notation. We will learn again. I will make a video about it, or right now I'll put some links in the description so that you can learn about it. So it is basically storing data in any other format we require. That will be only the data that we normally deal in a database. No, we are not talking about file storage. We are not talking about other kind of storage. We are talking about textual data. So Firestore, it's a NoSQL database. It can scale very easily, is quite cheap, and you will get some free resources in that, even if you are on the startup plan. So okay, that was about Cloud Firestore. But if you're not looking for a document collection based Firestore database that is very equivalent to what we know as MongoDB, then something else may be there for you, that is called a real-time database. Now again, it is not a SQL database, it is again a JSON based database, but it is mostly used for when you are using IoT applications or sensors in your environment, which will update certain fields in the database every few seconds, and your applications need to be updated based on that. So for example, in your room, there are some temperature sensors which are constantly monitoring it in an interval of 5 seconds and sending that data with updates to the database server, and depending upon those values in the database, your application will show some kind of user interface or a different kind. So when there is such a real-time activity involved, then instead of going through a NoSQL database like Cloud Firestore, we will go with a real-time database so that we can deal with the changes instantly. Okay, now coming to remote config. So this feature is more about changing your user interface, changing your application's logic based on some flags. So for example, you want to change some part of your application without rolling an update. Now, how is that possible? It is possible through remote config. So initially, for example, let us say there is a particular promotional period in which you will show a banner in your application, on clicking on which people can go to certain kind of deals. Now, for certain part of the country, certain part of the world or in the country, it is not allowed for that promotion to go on. So maybe it is that you have to check if the IP originating from those addresses is belonging to those countries, then you have to block it. Or maybe it is just that for some duration of time you want that promotion to be turned off. So these kind of conditions can be set up in remote config, and the app will look up through them through the Firebase SDK and will see what these conditions are, and if they match, then okay. If they don't, then they will follow some certain other logic. So it is basically an if-else kind of a logic simply that we are looking here. Moving on to Firebase ML. So of course, like machine learning is the token, or we can say the massively popular keyword since the last decade. Mostly the last 5 years of the technology era. It has reasons because machine learning and AI have been very contributing to a lot of fields, and it is quite a catching up field. There are a lot of technologies being developed to support it with hardware changes as well. So of course ML will be part of any mobile or web application as well and read it. So Firebase ML will provide you some certain number of features. For example, already built object recognition system, text to speech system, or voice recognition system, which are already developed by Google and are provided as services by Firebase ML. Or else what you can do is create your own machine learning model or algorithm for a particular kind of task and host it on Firebase ML, so that you can use the power of Firebase platform to run your models and to train them and use them in runtime to actually get the results. So Firebase ML is basically about machine learning in Android and mobile and web applications. Then moving to cloud functions. Now, not every time it is possible that all the logic that is in a backend server can be abstracted. Sometimes you just have to write down plain, simple, conventional code to make something running. So in that case, Firebase is not providing you any kind of server, right? So how will we manage that? How will we write our code and deploy it to a server so that we can access it maybe through an HTTP endpoint? So that is your answer. That is Cloud Functions. Write and run app logic server side without needing to set up your own server. That is the benefit of Cloud Functions. So it is only supporting Node.js as of now, and not even the latest LTS version, I hope, I suppose, but I do not exactly recall it. So what it is doing is allow you to write a number of Node.js based functions which will handle the logic that you want and will be triggered or will be called upon by a different set of events. So for example, you can write a function that will listen to reads or writes or deletion operation on particular entries in the database, and corresponding to that it will run some logic. That logic can be anything. It can be like pushing out a notification, changing some other fields of the database based on these changes, etc. and etc. So these functions can either be triggered by events in our other Firebase services, or they can be called in through HTTP endpoints. So that is all. That is all that Cloud Function provides, is basically is running the simple code that we write, but without setting up your own server. Now moving on to authentication. Of course, any application that deals with private information, sensitive information, has to have some kind of gateway for only authorized user to be able to use that information, right? So authentication has been a part of our life every day. Whenever you are using your mobile phone, whenever you are installing a new application, you are asking for either fingerprint authentication, or you are asking for a login or credentials, for example, sign in with Google, Facebook, or Apple. So all that logic, previously you had to write it down on your server, send the information from the app to the server, verify it, and then send back the result whether the user is actually valid or not. All that is taken care by Firebase. It has also a very large number of service providers that is popular with people. So for example, you have sign in with Google option, sign in with Twitter, Facebook, Apple, etc. Also, you have the traditional methods of signing it with the email ID and your password, as well as anonymous logins, and simply log in with your phone number so that an OTP will be sent on a registered number and you can verify it. So this is the basic authentication that we have known for so long. Finally, coming to cloud messaging, which deals with push messages. It is about sending notifications that is based on some kind of grouping mechanism. Let me explain it. So basically, we can send out notifications to either all of our users or a segment of them, or particular devices even. So for example, whenever you are registering your installing the application, your device will be given a particular token, and if we have that token, then we can specifically send a notification to you. Or else, for example, whenever you are signing in based on your some certain conditions, like what geography you are living in or what kind of personal information you have shared, we are creating groups of people based on that and providing messages to them only. For example, you have agreed to receiving notifications about gaming peripherals, then you will be part of that group that will be receiving messages about promotional ads or something related to that field only, gaming peripherals. So something like that. So either you can be in groups that will receive the messages, or you can be an individual user whose device has been registered, so they will receive the message. So something like that goes on with cloud messaging. Now moving on to hosting. So this is basically dealing with the web part of Firebase. So for example, you have a static website that you want to host and you want to do it for free, then Firebase is providing you one hosting service for free, and other you have to, for supporting more websites, you have to pay for it. So it is just simple website hosting, and it is only static. You currently cannot load dynamic websites. Okay. Now coming to cloud storage. Now how can it be possible that for current scale of applications, they will run without any kind of storage, right? They need kind of a storage everywhere, whether it is about uploading your files, uploading your videos, uploading any kind of media, you need storage. Now again, provisioning a server, managing its storage, allowing people to generate APIs so that they can upload the videos or these media is again a hassle. So just right off the back, Firebase is providing you a service that you just need to configure in your application and it will work magically. It will provide you with 10 GB of free storage in the beginner free plan, but then you can also configure it as per your need. So that was about all the build products. that allow you, that help you to actually make an application. Now we are going on to the next phase. That is, you have made your application and now you are releasing it to the market and monitoring its performance. So that is what release and monitor tools are responsible for. So before you release, there is one more thing. In between the development and the release phase, there is a testing phase. After you have tested your application perfectly, you are releasing it. Then, but again, there is no such thing as a perfect release. There may be some bugs, there may be some issues that people are facing because the ecosystem of mobile devices is so large that it is almost impossible to build an application that will deliver the same experience everywhere. So that is why we have some analytics that we have to collect about crashes or bugs. And finally, we are stabilizing them, monitoring them, and releasing out bug fixes, etc. So let us talk about these. So the first product that we come across is Crashlytics. Now, as I was saying, that it is almost impossible for an application to run buttery smooth every time on every device that the user is using it. Sometimes some bugs may escape into the release and it might cause some hassle. For example, authentication might not work, some code might be glitchy because of which some transaction may not be completed, etc. and etc. Or the app might simply crash. All this can be recorded, all these exceptions, all these errors that are generated inside the app that have nothing to do with what the user is actually seeing, in the sense that they are collecting logs about all the issues that are being generated, and these logs can be automatically collected by Firebase and they will be reported in a good looking dashboard, good looking UI, so that you can actually look at what point of time, at what point of the code did the actual crash or bug happen. So this will give you insights in quickly fixing the issues that your users are facing. Then we are moving to Google Analytics. Now, imagine that you are just leaving your application after you have released it. Well, there is no use in that. There is no benefit in that. What you want to do is to collect data about how your application is doing and what country it is doing better and what kind of ethnicity or group or demographic it is doing better, in what scenarios people are actually liking your app and using it continuously, in what scenario they're actually just opening it, not liking it, deleting it. So many informations are to be collected. Like, for example, did your user actually install the application or not after receiving a link for it? Did the user install it and then immediately uninstall it? Or did they spend some time looking at the application? Was there some kind of page that people really hated going to and just close the application upon opening it? All this information may seem trivial to you, but for an application developer, it is very crucial because it gives you an insight as to what is actually hindering the user or what might actually be benefiting the user. So all this information can be collected through Google Analytics integration into your application. Now again, remote config is here because remote config's role is in both development, releasing and monitoring, as well as in engagement. So when we are talking about releasing and monitoring, after we have released our app again without rolling out updates, we can make some changes in the remote config to bring out some changes in the user interface. For example, you don't want a particular part of the UI to be shown, then you can set up a flag that the flag in remote config is true, then only you will show it, otherwise don't show it. So you don't have to actually roll out updates. Okay. Now, when we are talking about performances, of course, it is very important to know that your application is performing well, that it is hitting that good FPS mark, it is running buttery smooth, the animations are not lagging, and it is not taking time to move from one screen to another. So all this performance perspective, like how much seconds it is taking for the application to start once it is closed, how much memory it is consuming, how much time it is taking between transitions from one part of the app to another, etc. and etc. So many metrics again to be collected and then analyzed and then fixed if there is a bug. Then we have test lab. So this is basically the testing part. So when you have created an application, you want to test it on a large number of devices because as it happens, Android is such a large ecosystem with so many versions of the OS being distributed. For example, even now when Android 11 is on the rise, there are so many devices that are only using 6 or 5 version. So you have to test your application so that it runs perfectly buttery smooth on them. But for that, you will need a lot of devices. First of all, like all these different hardware and software configurations, it will ruin you as a company if you keep on buying phones, So the answer is that you will use Test Lab, the feature from Firebase, which allows you to run your application on physical as well as emulated devices on Firebase platform. So you don't have to buy another phone, you don't have to use the emulated environment. It will automatically be created and assigned to you, and so you can actually use them as an actual environment, treat it as a user device, and then you can run those application and look into it, like what is going on, is there some error, is there some performance improvement to be done, etc. and etc. So this is basically the testing phase. Now coming to app distribution. So this is relatively new, that has been added to the Firebase library. So this is about pre-releasing your application. So for example, you must be familiar, if you are an iOS developer, that iOS has a program for releasing betas of your application. Similarly, Android has. So what it does is allow you to release a beta version of your application, invite people and allow them to give feedback on it. So of course there will be some issues with the pre-release version, and you will get to know exactly before releasing your application itself that what is to be done, what is to be changed based on the feedback on the beta testers. So it is about beta, basically beta releases. So okay, that was all about release and monitoring. We are finally moving on to engage. Now of course, any application to reap some benefit has to grow. It has to grow its user base, it has to grow the engagement with its user, so that they keep on using the application for a longer period of time, as well as make it sure that new customers are coming to your application. So that is what engagement is. Boost engagement with rich analytics, A/B testing, and messaging campaigns. Okay, so the three major points in engagement is that you have to understand your users better through analytics. You have to run some kind of experiments to let new features be given to the users and get their feedback as to if they are positive about it or not. And finally, customizing your application. So customization is a very new topic, I think, relatively introduced in the later part of the decade. It is so because that giving a tailored experience to your user is always beneficial to you, as it will generate more engagement, but it is also a difficult task to accomplish. So again, it is remote config. We can do a lot of things with remote config, I see. Again, it is about changing the user interface, changing the user behavior or experience without releasing a new update. So for example, based on your data, you know that particular group of people will mostly like a particular theme on your application. So based on the country location or some demographic information or some user preferences, you can actually allow them, or maybe change it from your own hand, that how the application will look to them without actually releasing a new version. So that is the power of remote config. So again, Google Analytics, as I was saying, collect data about how your users are actually using your application and analyze that and bring about new features and decide upon factors to be removed, so that the user experience is more smooth and they will be using your application for a longer period of time. Now, predictions is some kind of a thing that is related to machine learning again. So this is about using that analytics and making predictions as to what kind of a feature will be more beneficial to your platform. So either you can do manual analysis of the Google Analytics, or you can let predictions do it. Then we have A/B testing. Now, for example, suppose you have a new feature, a new UI to be delivered, a new kind of a user interface. For example, Paytm. Let us take an example of the payment provider in India that is called Paytm. It has so large number of features, but the UI is so jagged because there are so many options to select from. So they are continuously experimenting with the user interface. Now, suppose you are a company like that only, on an organization that is an application that you want to change some features in it, but you're not very sure whether the change will be accepted easily by your user base or not. So in that case, you will use A/B testing, where you will select certain segment of the user base which you will target with that new experimental feature. Run those experiments only by delivering those features to that particular segment, and let the feedback be collected, so that you can actually know, based on the collected analytics and feedback, whether this feature is actually worth it or not. So that is about A/B testing. Again, authentication from service providers like Google, Facebook, which has some additional personal information, will allow you to create a more personalized experience. So for example, on Facebook, you might get to know about the friends of the user, and based on that information, maybe you can come up with a more personalized experience. Now moving on to cloud messaging. Again, this is about personalization. So for example, based on the user's current activity, what kind of things he does in the application, we can generate an individualized or personalized campaign for them. For example, if they are looking for gaming peripherals, then we can give them a push notification notifying them of the latest deals in that category. Okay. So again, crash analytics. Now crash analytics has been repeated here. It is mostly about collecting data about the bugs or issues that the user are facing, but there is a greater advantage here, because by knowing what these issues are, you can actually improve the user experience, and hence again improve the engagement of the user. Keep your application as good without any bugs, and it will obviously allow you the people to like your application more and engage with it more. Now moving on to dynamic links. Now it must have been very popular these days, a referral, right? A referral that if you pass the link to the app install or the app store to different members of your family and friends, and if they install it, then you get to have some kind of a benefit. Also, there are also some options like open in app. For example, you are visiting the website, for example, Reddit or Instagram, there is a banner that is popping up these days that is saying open the same page but in the application. So that is the kind of dynamic links that we are talking about. So for example, a dynamic link can be like your personalized referral link, or it can be open in app link. So it will either check whether you have the app installed or not. If not installed, it will move you to the app store. Otherwise, it will just open the same page that you are looking at in the website, but in the app format. Okay, now the final thing, in-app messaging. So many a time you might have seen some kind of banners promo popping up in your application, not push notifications, but some kind of a section of a UI that looks like a message, that looks like a promotion or ad. So that is what we are talking about, in-app messaging. So for example, you have a sale going on, you are giving out a special discount for the users, then you want to make them see that while they are interacting within the application itself. So that is basically about targeted and contextual messages. We are encouraging active users to complete key in-app actions. For example, you are giving them a message that today there is a deal on particular category of products, and it will end after 20 minutes only. So that is kind of an in-app message. So that was all about the features that we talked about, the products and services that Firebase offers. There is also one more category that I would like to talk about, and that is called extensions. So recently, last year, I think Firebase introduced these concepts. So these are pre-packaged solutions that will save your time. Now these are not full-blown products, but these, as the name suggests, are extensions that will just save you some time in building some kind of a feature. So for example, we have a list of all these extensions here, which are actually growing all through the time. And maybe you can also at one particular time create your own extensions. So let us talk about a simple one, resize images. So for example, you have configured your application to store the profile pictures of the user, but obviously it may be so that the users are picking images that are too large for your storage. So what you want to do is any image that is coming in to your storage should be resized automatically. So you can install this extension and it will automatically handle that. Other things like trigger email. For example, there is a particular update operation going on in your database. For example, we are selecting a lottery winner. So whenever that lottery winner is selected, we will like to send out an email to them that you are selected as a winner. Or for example, there is some kind of a error that is happening in the database, an operation that should not happen, then you want to trigger an email. So it is simply about triggering email. Then we have translated text, shorten URL. Shorten URL is a very beneficial one. So for example, you are sharing some kind of link from here to there, maybe shortened URLs will be helpful, but right now it is about Firestore collections. That is all I think about all the services we are talking about for Firebase, what it actually provides. In the next video, I think we will go to the Firebase console, in which you actually use all of these services. Now there is a demo project here which we will explore, in which all the services are mostly already configured, so we can see a running application. Otherwise, whenever you are creating a new application, it will be basically empty without any kind of data to look at. So in the next video, we will explore this, actually how the application looks, how the dashboard looks, how we can interact with the various services that we have talked about right now, and you will get a general idea how to use them. Okay, so that's all for this video. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that you liked this video, and if you did, then show your support by dropping a like, subscribing to the channel if you want more and more notifications, and you can hit the bell icon, and you can share this with your friend if you want them to also learn some new cool things on the internet about technology, of course. Then that's it for this video. Let us meet again at some later time. Thank you again, and sayonara. Fardeen Khan out. Code Panthers out.